Hey everyone, this is Louis7 and another episode of LOTRO Basics. In this episode I will be going over a leveling Runekeeper build, and I think yellow's a good spec to level a Runekeeper, so this will be the first Runekeeper episode. It will be on the yellow line. So the yellow line's good because it's a lot of instant cast and you can kite, and it's generally solo friendly, and that means it's good for leveling. So we'll go ahead and spec into it and look how we build. So you do get 2 spells instantly just from speccing into it, which are strong spells, Rid of Lightning and Sustaining Bolt. Those are good skills that you'll want to use. Lightning Bolt builds 3 attunement, which is really good. Or Rid of Lightning, not Lightning Bolt, sorry. Sustaining Bolt, on the other hand, that one costs attunement, and it has some other effects that you'll get eventually in the line. Okay, so the first thing I recommend, I don't necessarily think Ceaseless Argument's too good, but it's worth getting, especially while leveling compared to the others. And then, especially while leveling, you'd prefer Confounding Principles over Exacting Words. The critical defense isn't too useful. It is more useful at higher levels especially, and endgame content, but while leveling you'll definitely want Confounding Principles, and that's true for pretty much solo anything as a Lightning Runekeeper. Okay, so that'll unlock the next row. Let's go ahead and look at our trait bonuses, and this is just a passive Fury of Storm damage bonus, and that's all your lightning skills, Fury of Storm, so that's good. So the next rows has increased fate, which is, it's a small amount and it's pretty useless. It gives critical rating, that's the most useful thing it gives. As you can see, I don't have it on my Runekeeper, and this is a little bit late, but I do want to mention I'm on my level 105 Runekeeper, but I'm on him to kind of show the build and how I build it, which I couldn't do on a low level Runekeeper. I couldn't do the whole leveling build, which this will cover pretty much all of leveling. It'll cover all the points I have actually. Okay, so anyway, back to the build. I would take Tactical Critical Chance because you really like Critical Chance as Lightning, because a lot of your damage comes from big crits and just criticals in general, and you'll have a lot of crit chance and additional boost to your crit chance. Okay, so we got the second set bonus, which Rid of Lightning also increases enemy inductions and attack duration. So this is actually a little bit of a support trait bonus. What does it do? It debuffs the enemy. So that's actually pretty good, and it stacks per tier, and the increased attack duration is always good for enemies, not good for you. And enemy induction, so that's just a nice passive bonus to something we already use, and it gives some utility for your fellowship. Okay, while leveling, Runestones are very useful, so I definitely recommend getting that immediately when you unlock it, and that's actually going to be true for the red line too, but we'll get to that in just a moment, or in the next video, not in just a moment. Okay, so anyway, we can look at going back to Confounding Principles, because that was another useful one, or we can look at this. This one's definitely useful because it gives your lightning skills an ability to increase the crit chance of your lightning skills, and since you want crits, if you just keep doing that, it's a 20% crit chance after you get all these. Okay, so that's only a 15% chance, but it's definitely useful. So we'll go ahead and get 4 points in that because it's more useful than getting another rank in that. Okay, so this unlocks the next row, and you want Epic Conclusion. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. It's a big Epic Conclusion type skill, so it fits its name. Then you could get the additional slow is nice, but overall the increased damage is mainly used for its utility. A little percent increased damage isn't overall too useful, but the slow can be nice. We'll look back at that. We'll go ahead and get 1 more point in Thunderous Words to max that out and open this. And this one we do want also. This one has a 15% chance to give you a buff too, but this buff just increases your tactical damage, so that's definitely useful, more useful than getting the Runestone, even though you want to use the Runestone a lot, especially if you're in a tougher situation. But this would still be better. So we'll get 3 points on that, it looks like, and that unlocks the next row. And before I get into the next row, let's go ahead and cover the things we missed over here. So Master of Tragedy restores 2 maximum power if you get a lightning skill crit. Usually you don't have power problems with lightning, perhaps it could be just because of this trait bonus, but it's definitely nice so you don't run out of power basically. And this is one's interesting, that it increases your critical chance and critical damage per battle attunement. So if you're at maximum attunement and cast Epic Conclusion, that will be, you have 10 attunement basically, like 10 attunement pips, so that's 10% increased crit chance and 30% increased critical damage. So that would be a lot of damage increase, which is definitely good. So overall it's just a nice passive bonus for when you're at maximum attunement. And actually often with lightning, your attunement consuming skills will be on cooldown, so even for your regular builders that'll still be useful. Okay, so now we're on to this. Vivid Imagery is good. It's a CC, it dazes enemies, it's an AoE, close range though, but still useful. So I definitely go ahead and get 1 point in that. But at this point, I would recommend finishing out Harsh Debate, and that'll unlock this, which, okay, this increases the proc chance of these past two ones we got. Remember, it was 15%. And then when both the buffs become active on the Runekeeper, they become one buff. So if you get both buffs at once, they will become a single buff, and then that buff can be consumed by Epic Conclusion to increase its damage and reduce its cooldown. So that does a lot. It's a single trait that finishes out that kind of chain. And it's definitely useful because increasing the you can see the ranks increase it all the way up to 40% increased damage, the Epic Conclusion combo. And then you also have plus 5% chance to each of these procs once you max it out, which will be 20%. Overall, it's definitely useful, and go ahead and put 2 points in it to unlock the next tier. Okay, so this one's also interesting, that increases your critical damage, and it can stack. Yeah, it can stack, and you can basically keep casting your lightning skills and get a huge critical damage buff. Well, as huge as it can get, it can only stack 5 times, but 25%. But then when you crit, it's gone. Definitely useful to get at least 1 in, just to have that chance. Once you get to 5, it's guaranteed, which is always nice. So after 5 skills, if you don't crit, you'll have a plus 25% lightning damage, critical damage. And then of course it does expire if out of combat, but you'll be using it in combat anyway. So I think at that point it would actually be better to go ahead and finish closing remarks out, just so you have that, and those are things you definitely want. This is generally nice, but you do want that chance to start. And then this one's Vivid Imagery target, and then that would, so it increases the targets and the last rank will decrease the cooldown. We'll come back to that, maybe we'll come back to it, but we'll go ahead and get this increased proc chance. Okay, so that unlocks the last line here. And before I get into that last line, let's go ahead and look at the rest of these. So we finished the increased crit stuff per pip, for battle attunement pip. So this is sustenance, and then it makes sustaining bolt, this one we got here. It makes that heal morale, and it also has increased potency based on battle attunement, so you want to use that at maximum battle attunement. And yeah, that'll increase your morale, and it's actually pretty useful. It's only a 15-second cooldown skill, and it restores a decent amount of morale, so that's good. And it's definitely useful while leveling, even though at this point you'll be pretty high level, it'll still be generally useful. This one on every lightning skill on critical hit, so when you crit, the next lightning attack will penetrate 10% of the target's mitigation. So whenever you crit, basically you penetrate extra mitigation, so in effect it increases your crit damage even more. So you can see there's a bunch of crit stuff like I said early on, so crit is definitely good as a lightning Runekeeper. And while leveling, that's not to say you should stack gear with critical rating, you should still use what's best with will and tactical mastery. But at the level cap, you will want to reach the critical rating cap, which I am not at, but I do mostly play fire, which I want the critical cap for that too. So that just shows I'm still poorly geared on my Runekeeper. But anyway, that's definitely useful for you for when you crit. Okay, so the last one here is actually an active skill, but you can't regularly use it. It has to proc, basically. It's a chance for that skill to proc. It does a lot of damage, it does about Epic Conclusion damage. Epic Conclusion can do a lot of damage. It has the potential to do a lot more damage on a big devastating hit, which is just a stronger critical hit. But Static Surge's base damage and base critical damage would be just about the same as Epic Conclusion, but it's short range and it is AoE. Every mob in front of you will take the hit, but it does have the 10% chance to activate whenever you use a lightning skill, so you can't just constantly spam it every 3 seconds, unfortunately. Lightning would definitely be a good spec if you could. But anyway, yeah, like Epic Conclusion can still do more damage, it's just that does do a lot of damage, and it's one of our higher damaging skills is lightning. So that would definitely be useful once you get it while leveling, because, I mean, it's a huge damage to a mob, and an AoE, it can help you a lot if it procs. Okay, so anyway, we're on the last row here. This just unlocked. And okay, that's for a short duration after using steady hands, which is the skill here. It'll switch your attunement, so if you're fully healing attuned, it'll switch you to fully battle attuned. If you're battle attuned, it'll switch you to healing. Same amount of attunement. It'll also make your skills cost no power for 15 seconds. Okay, so that's what that does. But for a short duration after using steady hands to switch attunements, using a skill which returns you to neutral attunement will actually activate the steady hands effect again. So that will actually make it cost no power again, your skills, and switch you back to attunement, so you can quickly pop a heal like a bubble, for example, Ward of Exaltation, and use steady hands, or use a skill to return to neutral attunement, which this returns to neutral attunement, and instead go to battle attunement with that. I think that's how that works. I am not completely sure, but that's how it sounds like it works. It might just still return you to neutral attunement and make you have no power cost, but either way it's still just generally nice to have as a utility while leveling. I think in max level content it wouldn't be as useful, but again, this is a leveling build focused around leveling. Okay, so here we have Concession and Rebuttal, which is a cooldown skill to make some of your lightning skills more powerful. So you have 5 charges that can be consumed, and it lasts forever until you leave combat, and then it'll expire out of 9 seconds. So you have 5 charges that just stay with you. So it's not like you have to use them in 10 seconds or anything. Of course, unless you leave combat for 9 seconds, then you do want to use all of them. But Epic Conclusion leaves a trailing dot for a portion of the damage dealt. That one's really useful. Sustaining Bolt returns power, not too useful. Rid of Lightning applies max rank of debuff. It's kind of useful if you don't already have that on the mob. And then, going kind of out of order how they are, Shocking Word slows target for 5 seconds after being stunned. Not the most useful, but kind of if you need to slow somebody. Epic Conclusion is what you usually want to consume that as, but sometimes you don't have a choice because you just want to regularly use your other skills. So you do want that trait. It's definitely useful. Cooldown to increase Epic Conclusion, leave the dot, effectively increasing its damage. Okay, so that's the last row. So what do you do now? I recommend finishing Furious Storms out, and that'll get your Static Surge, and that again increases the lightning critical damage for every lightning skill you cast and all that stuff. And then at this point it's kind of up to what you want to do. If you're leveling, you still don't need too much critical defense. I won't worry about that. At this point, when you spent all these traits so far, the Runestone isn't too useful. The slow and extra damage won't be mostly what you use it for. You want to use it mainly for the stun, and the damage is nice but nothing to like overall. So I recommend getting plus 5% tactical damage in the red line, the fire line. And then none of these are too useful for what lightning wants to do. This has an induction. You don't really want to be inducting as lightning. This is a healing utility thing. Self-motivation, it basically makes that heal, which, you know, isn't bad, but compared to other things we might be able to get, they could be more useful. So for leveling, you might want to get Mending Verse, and you might want to get this earlier if you're having particular troubles. But especially solo, it can just be a nice thing. Even though it doesn't restore that much morale, it's still just nice to have. And then yeah, at this point, it's kind of up to what you want to do and how you feel. I think this is enough to get you started leveling. So you could get the Rune of Restoration to do some off healing, albeit not that great, but it's decent for solo if you're doing some harder stuff. Then you could increase will, 168 will, let me see real quick. That would give you 1344 tactical mastery at the level cap, and at lower levels it'd be more useful, but again, if you spend all these points, you're not going to be low level anymore. I just saw this. We could get the last one of Confounding Principles. We might come back to that. And yeah, there's just not too much too useful from here. You could delve a little bit more into fire and get some of that stuff. So if we went a little bit into fire, probably get this because we don't use the fire skills too much, and get the fire runestone. That could be a little bit useful. If you want some AoE instead, gotta take a point out of that. You could get Essence of Flame and then actually get this fire buff one. This will increase your fire damage, stacking up to 5 times, and it's just continuous. It lasts 10 seconds. And then you could get a point here, and if you had enough points, get the increased targets, which is definitely nice, gives you extra AoE as lightning. So that's a possibility if you have enough points, but again, at that point you might even be at the level cap and not leveling anymore. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Like I said, depends what you want to do. If you raid in yellow line for some reason instead of red, like if your group's okay with that and you enjoy yellow line more, you could definitely take that critical defense. It's useful for all lines actually, but again, not too useful solo leveling. It's a little bit for surviving, but... And then yeah, for solo I would, out of our options, get statically charged after that. And then there's just not much left to spend at this point. You could get increased fate or increased will. I would recommend will. And yeah. If I were to continue building like a... Well, if I had enough points, I would get the Limit of Flame. If I were continuing on this specific track, I would probably go and get this Healing Runestone and give a little bit of the power restore to Prelude to Hope, just in case you need to restore a tiny bit of power to somebody for some reason. You probably want it, but it's just something to have there. So I'll go ahead and apply this because I like this build and it is something I'd use at the level cap. And Vivid of Imagery, I don't think those 4 points are worth it even. Well, compared to the increased will, now that I think about it, is actually more useful to me. So I'll go ahead and do that actually. But I take those 4 points out, the point out of that, and again go the Limit of Flame and Fire Runestone track if I had enough points. But at that point you probably won't be leveling. So that's it for this build. So here at the end of the episode I will include a little bit of gameplay with the yellow line and how I play it. I need to move some of my skills around so we can see how it plays and some of the strengths. Right now I'm in Library at the Myrdain instance. It's one of the Eregion ones. And it's similar to the one I did on the Warden. It's a 3-man, except I'm on my Runekeeper this time, so it's probably going to be a little bit harder. But I actually thought this one would be good to show more the different aspects of how yellow line can be useful. Especially if you compare it to red line, where red line would be dealing more damage overall, but yellow has some of the CC and other stuff that helps it survive this. So normally I actually don't use Ceaseless Argument, but it's still a useful trait like I said for leveling. So I'm going to go left here to be safe. Actually I'll go ahead and take the middle now that he's not there. But you can see you can kite while using your skills, and then Static Surge does a lot of damage. And when you crit it does a lot, like even Rid of Lightning there did about 11k. So let's take this guy. and try Epic Conclusion. See, that crit for 30k, so that's definitely useful. We were talking about the crits a bunch. I think that crit about 19k. It was hard to see with those numbers. But hopefully this is showing you a little bit of how Yellow Line uses. I mainly use what's off cooldown, and you see Ceaseless Arguments, it is the weakest lightning skill. So right now I need to use some AoEs in my lightning runestone. But anyway, yeah, Ceaseless Argument's one of our weakest, so it's very rarely used, and that's actually why I don't have it equipped. See, I didn't even need to use it there because Scribe Spark, I think that's called, it was off cooldown. And you can see how strong Static Surge is when I use it. So I better use this here with the AoE. In this instance in particular, when you damage him, it'll split between one of his random goblin things. I'm not sure exactly what they're called. I need to pay a little bit more attention to this too. Okay, let's try Steady Hands to see how that worked. And yeah, that does switch you back to Battle Attunement. I'm not sure if you remember I was talking about that. I wasn't sure if it just switched you back to Steady Attunement, so that's good to know. And and Sustaining Bolt heals, I gotta remember that too. I'm being a bad Runekeeper right now. There we go. See, that healed a good chunk of my morale. Speaking of, it's not like a huge morale heal, but considering it does decent damage too, and it's a regular skill you want to use, it's good. So hopefully, like I said, this is showing you a bit of the Yellow Line, and I'm a bit low on morale now, so I'll heal and clear just a little bit more, so I can see a little bit of the yellow strengths. So I'm going to actually be smart and use my stuff early this time. And then Epic Conclusion. This is where Static Surge procs can be extremely useful. Now I want to use this now that it's off cooldown, the Runestone again. Alright, this is messing me up too much. Move my skill bar how it was. When leveling, like I said, that can be useful, because more often you'll just have less stuff to do, but once you get high level you can always switch that point out for something else. That would have been a nice time to crit, since it base hit for 11k. Could have crit real high there. So I will pull with the Runestone again, and see, it even draws aggro to them, so that's nice. And then I'll stun them, and then you can use the Runestone again. I think the second time they'll be immune to the stun, but the third time, again, you can use it. At this point I have Vivid Imagery. Alright, so hopefully that did show you a little bit of how the Yellow Line can be useful, and with kiting and the CC and AoE, I have a bunch of notifications here. Okay, so anyway, that'll be it for this episode of LOTRO Basics. Like the Warden one, it was a little bit long, but pretty much all of these will probably be long, but if you have feedback on that, it's appreciated. If there's any class or spec you want to see, that's also appreciated if you leave a comment with that, so I can know what people want to see. So if this was helpful, if you could leave a like and subscribe for more, that would be great. And thanks for watching, everyone.